Welcome to your weekly update for the week of July 27th to July 1st. And we're finally getting a lot of beds set out on the farm. I'll take you guys through the things that we've been doing this week. And we'll start at the bottom here. Before we start, just a reminder that I daily vlog at fromthefield.tv. So anything you're curious about that we're going to look at in overview, all these things are covered in detail at fromthefield.tv. And if you want to sign up for that and check it out, you can sign up for 7 days for free with no commitment. If you're not happy, you can walk away, no problem, you won't be charged. So that's fromthefield.tv. Okay, so we're here at the end of a larger terrace that we're in the middle of completing right now. We've done all of our preliminary earthworks over the last number of months to shape out where things are going. Now what we're in the process of doing is sifting soil, so screening soil. We're screening 2 types of soil back at our soil pit. If you followed the videos for the last little while, you would have seen that at least a few times. We've got a big soil screen set up. The skid steer scrapes away topsoil and separates it from subsoil, and then we screen the subsoil, and then we bring that in. So what we're looking at here is what we're targeting. This is our finished product. And essentially what we do is we come on our base material, which behind the camera is essentially what you're standing on. And then we come in with subsoil that has been screened, and we have our plot staked out. So here we've got, this one in particular is 9.5 feet wide and 36 feet long, and we've put 6 30 by 16 30 inch by 16 foot beds here. So we come in with the subsoil, we lay down about 1 foot deep in our, we've got our corner pins all pinned out, so this would have been all strung out with string. And then I come in with a flat shovel and I shovel my walkways about 1 foot deep. So it's a really big channel. So they're it's 1 foot by foot, basically, foot wide by foot deep. And I put that on the bed, so that actually makes the beds about 18 inches deep with subsoil. Then once I have that all done, I come in with my mulch. I've got a huge pile of mulch. I'm sitting on about 60 yards right now that I've gotten from the one of the local mills in the area. They give it away, I just got to pay for trucking. And it's beautiful material, smells nice too. And so once we get those channels dug out, then I put my wood chips right down the center. So I'm standing on at least 1 foot compacted of wood chips, and my soil from here is about 18 inches deep. It's very, very deep. So we get our mulch laid out all around our perimeters. I had to do quite a bit of shoring up with rocks here just to stabilize the end of the terrace, which we've done. All these terraces are built with rocky overburden, and they're packed down with the mini excavator. So they're super packed, compacted, and what we're putting on top is where our soil profile and our growing area is going to be. And so once we get our subsoil down, our mulch down and spread, then I come in with a bunch of topsoil, which has been screened, and we put about 1/3 or maybe 1/4 of what we had in subsoil. So we've got, on these beds in particular, we have about at least a couple inches of topsoil on top of the subsoil. And from here, I'll be fertilizing these beds and finishing with a little bit more topsoil to cover that fertilizer. And then from there, depending on what I'm going to plant here, will dictate what I do. We're actually going to be using my soil screen in the next week or so to screen this mulch material to get a finer mulch that on some beds with certain crops will put that mulch directly on the bed as well. And so I don't know what's going to go here yet. We've started most of our fall crops, and we can go look at that on our way up as we go through the work site here. But this is essentially what we're targeting. And for irrigation, I'm using mini wobblers. This is a 4-foot riser, piece of rebar hammered into the ground. Got all my coupling pieces on here. And this is what I'm using to irrigate most of everything on the homestead here. I love these sprinklers. They're really low maintenance. They don't get plugged very easily. They can operate on a massive range of pressure and flow. And that's often changing here because we're gravity fed here. So I pump from a well 85 feet above from where the well is. And then we gravity feed everything down. And so when those tanks are at, call it 90 to 100% full, I've got about 35 PSI down around here. And then when those tanks go down to about 50%, my PSI drops to about 25% or 25. And then when they go from 50 to 0, the PSI really drops off. And so the advantages that I have with these sprinklers is that regardless of what pressure I have, they operate consistently. And so that's really advantageous. And the nice thing I have too about, having on a large acreage is I don't really have to care about where water's thrown. When I used to be urban farming, I could never use sprinklers like this in my urban context because my farm blocks were always small and they always finished with a fence or a house or whatever. And so I didn't want to just throw water all over the place because I'd be watering a fence or watering a neighbor's house or whatever. But here, I don't even care that these aren't centered because I'll throw water on the sides and water my area around that I want to keep nice and green. And I also want the lower side of these terraces that we finished out to green up as well. And they're full of weed seeds and all kinds of natural flora that's around here, and they'll just germinate and stabilize by us watering them. So that's kind of what we're using. And yeah, so probably next week when we come back, all this terrace will be finished. So if we just step back here a little bit, I can show you right here. I've got an area staked out. So I've got a pin here and a pin there. And if you just stay there, and a pin here. So what we're looking at here is a 16-foot wide by 40-foot long area. This is where we're going to put the other high tunnel. So just like the one that we built up there, the special high tunnel I refer to it as, I've got another 11 of those bows. So we're going to put that high tunnel right here on this terrace. And this is a project that'll happen, I don't know, maybe it'll be done by the time we come back next week, but we have a lot of other things to do as well. But what we're going to do is, in order to get that high tunnel on this ground, I can't just hammer posts into this ground because we're standing on super rocky overburden. And unless I wanted to be drilling with a Hilti drill through fractured and moving rock, which is really difficult to do, I have to find another way to do it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a footing, and we're going to pour concrete. So we're basically going to go right on top of this hard packed ground that we're on, and we're going to build a footing that will be 3 2x4 widths high, which is 9.5 inches, I believe. And then it's going to be 6 inches wide. And so we're going to lay that out, and then we're going to hammer rebars into the ground wherever we can. And then we'll be putting our posts, our ground posts for the greenhouse will also get set into that concrete, kind of like what I did with the other one. And then we'll pour this footing. And that's essentially how these bows are going to be attached to the ground, because it'll just be way too difficult to put the ground posts for the greenhouse in this ground. And so before we finish out all of our soil here, we're going to get that footing down, pour it, and then we'll leave our access open, and then we can come in and bring our subsoil, rake out those beds, bring in our mulch, bring in our topsoil, all that. We'll do that once we have those ground posts down. So that's what's going on down here. Just looking around if anything else in this area. One thing I did this week that was in the daily vlogs is I irrigated my orchard rows down here. So there's now basically just 2 lines of drip on there. It's really simple. And that's what's happening there. One thing I can show you just back here and how I'm tying off all the irrigation or on this property is, this is my main line. This is a 1.5 inch prime 100 poly line that can handle 100 psi. And so I have about 3,000 feet of this going all around our primary perimeter, which is the sort of 8 acres that we're in right now. All the open area here on our property, which is 40 acres, but in the open area is this 8 acres. It's all fenced, and I've got this prime 100 line basically looping around it. And I can tie off anywhere here and send water anywhere I want, out that way if I want, or in this way. And everything comes off here. So as we're sitting here, we're probably sitting on about 45 psi. And so whenever I want to get area to a garden plot, if I want to irrigate some trees, if I want to irrigate just some pasture, which eventually this entire 8 acres will be irrigated. We'll be sprinkling water on the pasture area to build up our soil here, because it's very brittle in this area and it's very dry. And, you know, thankfully we've had a very rainy season. In some ways, it's actually, this property is probably greener than it's been in a long time. But in order for us to get water anywhere, I can do a couple different things. One is I can cut into our prime 100 line, and every few hundred feet along this line, I have an on-off valve that's tied in. So I don't have to run all the way up to the well or the cisterns to turn the water off. I can just follow this line for about 100 or so feet, and there's an on-off. I can turn that off, then I can cut this line, and then I can splice something in. So what I've done for this garden plot, because this terrace that we're on right here is a couple hundred feet. So I want to keep pressure on this line. I essentially want to have another header line that comes in here. So I've spliced in, I've put in a coupling, which is a barbed T. So it's a 1 1/4 barbed, then it goes down to a 1 inch thread. And I've tied off and gone from 1.5 or 1 inch NPT to a 3/4 barbed fitting that goes to now would go to a 3/4 prime 100 line. Now this line can hold pressure. So I've teed off here. Now I've got another header line that's coming along our terrace. And then, again, this line can hold pressure. So I've got a constant pressure here. And in order to turn these sprinklers on, I would just turn this guy here, which I'll just do a tiny bit, but I don't have to go full blast so we don't get the camera wet. And that's how these beds will be watered. Now, once I get everything set and I'm not doing any earthworks anymore, all of my irrigation on this property will be tied to a central hub, and I'll be running wires to solenoid valves that will turn on and off here automatically. But I don't want to lay those wires down yet because we're still doing earthworks, and I don't want to put anything in the ground until all the earthworks are done. And so that means for now, probably for most of this season, I just come down and turn this on when I want. It means I just got to micromanage my water a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. I also have some battery operated timers, so I could easily just splice those in and have timers that way for now if I wanted. But eventually, once our groundworks are set, everything will be set up with timers and solenoid valves, and we'll have a main hub for that irrigation system on the main passive solar greenhouse, and I can just control everything there. But for now, we'll just operate it manually. So let's head up towards the greenhouse there. So as we build these terraces out, there's another one here that we're going to finish today. We shore up the bottom with big rocks, and this is our own sort of do-it-yourself way of doing retaining walls. And then from there, we can just bring up smaller rocks the higher we go. It also depends on how steep the incline is. Generally, we try to stay within 45 degrees, but we have so many rocks on this property. They're just an absolute blessing, because you try to buy rocks like this, a rock like this might cost you 80 bucks. So it's just been an absolute blessing, because we don't need to do concrete for these retaining walls. We can just use rocks, And this is how we're kind of building them up. And I'll show you one over here that's almost finished. So here's an example of what an almost completed retaining wall built with big rocks looks like. And we had to shore this one up quite a bit because this incline was quite steep, and I left it that way knowing that I would do this. And so, you know, all these rocks are just coming from here. As we dig on this property, we find all these rocks. That's how rocky it is here. But I mean, a rock like this from a landscape company might cost you $200. Like it's ridiculous how expensive rocks are, and we just have them for free. And so it's, again, one of the pros and cons of my property is there's rock everywhere, which makes it difficult to dig, but all that rock makes incredible earthworks and landscaping features. And so this is what we're targeting. And then from here, what I'll do is I bring in smaller rocks. And so I'll take rocks like this and just throw them in the gaps, and I'll shore up this a number of inches, maybe 6 inches to a foot higher than my soil surface level here. And then I'll probably finish with some sand in here as well, so that it packs in and settles in between the rocks. And then these beds will next get our mulch, just like we saw down there, to finish up completely. So we're finishing the siding of the house. This isn't the color that this will be. Oh, I said the house, this is the greenhouse, but our house will be similar. So we're just doing hardy plank and smart trim, and this will be painted like a dark gray, and our trims will be black. But the front of the greenhouse here is finished as far as the siding. And then if we come around the corner here, this particular wall is going to be corrugated steel running vertically, and we've got our J trims in there, and then that's what the steel butts into. So this whole feature wall will all be steel, and then that steel will wrap around, and then at the 2 foot mark here, it'll be the height of here, steel, and then this will be hardy plank. And so that we've been chipping away at that. That's been going along great. Quite a lengthy process, but it's coming along nicely. Last thing I want to show you guys is our new solar panel rig. So we poured a lot of concrete this week, had a big pour day. Kind of the front end of our week was spent on finishing up all these forms. So we're moving this whole solar panel rig right here, which is facing kind of true south. We're moving that up the hill here. And we've poured the same pads basically right here. So this panel is coming up here, which is going to mean that all 3 of these panels flow in sort of a half moon shape, because the furthest panel over there faces southwest, the panel in the center faces true south, and then this one will be tilted about 20 degrees to the east. And they all are about 20 degrees apart in their angle. And so what's going to be really nice about this one is that in the winter and the early shoulder seasons, or early and late shoulder seasons, this panel is going to catch unimpeded, no shade, the morning light, which will give me probably, this one alone will probably be producing about 5 kilowatts right at that time. And that's the time you need it the most, actually, is in the morning. I found, living off grid for a year now, that your southeastern exposure in a cold climate is your most important exposure, whether you're growing or you're off grid, because you've gone through the night, and if we're talking about in a growing aspect, you've gone through the night, temperatures dropped, you need to get that warmth and sun on you as early as possible to warm up your greenhouse, get on your crops or whatever. And it's the same with solar power. Is you've gone through the night, you're using electricity, you know, when you did the dishes at night, and you had the lights on and all the power that you're using. Your first morning light is crucial to get you getting started, because when you get up in the morning, you're using power in the same way and you're drawing it. And so instead of drawing off your batteries, if you can be pulling directly from power coming in from the solar, that's better on your system, that gives you more longevity. So this panel is actually going to be quite crucial for that. And so this is where I should have put it in the first place, but hindsight being 2020, I didn't have the perspective on this whole project at the time when I was just getting started. So no big deal. We've got those there. So on early this week, we're going to start disassembling this and moving it up there. But what we've done in the meantime, Or what we've done to repurpose this is we've poured a little concrete stem wall that connects all these pads, and we drilled in rebar into it so it's totally connected to these pads. Once we strip these forms, we're gonna pack this cavity with sand, and then we're gonna pour a 1.5 inch slab over top of this to turn this into a big, it'll be, it's 10 feet by, I believe, 22 or 26 feet, big slab. And then this is where I'm going to build my wood shed. So it'll be a simple lean-to, no walls, a roof, and then all of my firewood is gonna go in here. And on this corner, under the roof, this is where my wood boiler is gonna go, and then it's getting piped to all of our different buildings. That's gonna send glycol water to all of our different, there's gonna be some radiant heaters in the garage. There's gonna be a forced air heater in the passive solar greenhouse. There's the radiant floor with PEX in the special high tunnel. We'll also be sending heat over to our cabin. So we won't need to use a single wood stove in there. It'll all be connected to the boiler. Eventually the boiler will all be connected to the house. So that's our central heating hub here. I only need to do one fire a day for it, opposed to multiple fires at multiple stoves. And then what we're doing on this side of the shed is basically the size of this pad right here. I'm going to isolate this area. It'll be under the same roof as this whole thing, but it'll be insulated and walled in, and I'm moving my whole diesel generator unit to here. And I'll be able to open it up with a door there. And I have a special 600 liter tidy tank for that, which will also go here as well. And so this way, this unit is off the building, because this thing is quite loud. It's very low vibration, and so you feel it and you hear it. When I'm in my office and that generator is running, you hear it. And so if I was doing a podcast or something like that, the sound would cut through. And so by bringing it over here, putting it on its own stable concrete pad, and then framing this with a 1.5 inch rigid insulation should dampen most of the sound, as well as get it off that building, so we won't hear it once we're living in the new house, or once we're in the cabin in the winter. This can be running and we won't hear it. And one of the things we did with a little bit of excess concrete is I poured a little pad here, that this is our well, that I'm just gonna frame a little simple room around here, a little well access thing. And so this whole electrical bit will just be mounted inside. This room will be maybe 6 feet high, and it's just a way to protect this well and have a little utility room. So we just poured this little pad on some compacted sand, and yeah, that's that. So that is pretty much our weekly update. And if you guys found that video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, share the videos with your friends. And if you want to see my daily vlogs, head over to fromthefield.tv. All right, see you guys in the next one.